I don't think I've been allowed to clap yet.
I don't think you have. I've taken every opportunity.
I think that's just because I think it's because you remembered just before. Because every single video you go, the clap.
Yeah,
It's almost a good thing.
It is always it is. I put hips into it. Let us know when we're ready, DJ Khaled.
One day I'm going to get to clap.
Not today.
Not today, even though it's the same day. Let's not ruin that illusion, though.
No, it's still there. People still believe.
So, episode 7.
Yep, still not.
Still
not great with the episodes. No, I'm still on like 1G in my head.
Oh, the letters thing.
Yeah, I got convinced.
You didn't
with
like
the
it,
letters.
and now you love it.
Now I'm convinced. Yeah, because it's this. Where do we go with Z? You know, that's the bit. Yeah, but hey, 7. I just had to check. Check. Hi. Hello. We're back.
We are.
Let's dive straight in.
Okay.
Because I'm excited. Because of what's on my wrist. Because I made it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You just want me to ask you, don't you?
Yeah.
Go on then. What's on your wrist?
Because you asked, I have got... They do not make this configuration.
Ooh.
This is a root beer, and it is on an OEM Jubilee. But not any Jubilee.
Okay.
It's on a Super Jubilee.
Okay.
I have raided a Datejust 36 with a beautiful steel and rose gold bracelet.
Yep.
And it connects. You've got to play around maybe with the spring bars. I think you've got to use the spring bars from the Datejust. But I have created I'm going to give it to you so you can get hands on with it.
That's very cool.
I've obviously got the other bracelet, the Oyster bracelet, but the fact I've been able to add the Jubilee, which obviously we're doing the Watches and Wonders have come out today.
Yeah.
We just revealed what day we film on.
Very cool.
But they didn't release that, which I was kind of hoping they might do. But yeah, Super Jubilee OEM bracelet. I pinched it from a Datejust 36.
There is something about the root beer that I just love.
Yes. It is a great piece, and it matches my hair colour a little bit.
And my jumper today.
Yeah, it would look good on the wrist. It's a good piece, but controversially, I'm going to own up to this now. The watch that I said I was going to keep recently, yes, I sold it.
R.I.P.
Yes. But I'm very proud of myself, if I can pat myself on the back. I lasted 4 months with that Yachtmaster 42.
Okay.
But I've changed it for this, and I've also changed it for something in the next episode, which is a Grail watch.
Teaser alert.
Yeah, it's platinum.
Ooh.
And it is a perpetual calendar.
Okay.
Platinum perpetual calendar. That's all you're getting for now. But oh my god, it's...
You're excited, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, even though I've got it and it's mine, it's one of those ones that it's like it's near the top of a brand as well. That's people are going to come in for next week and be like, "What is it?" Yeah. It'll be even if I forget in half an hour's time and don't put that on my wrist and then realise, if it starts, root beer with a Jubilee, Super Jubilee.
Yep,
I did it. I love it.
Well done.
Thank you. That's me. What you got?
So, as we're going to be talking about the Swatch group in today's episode, I am actually wearing my longest owned watch. It is an Omega Speedmaster Broad Arrow GMT. And I have to say, a lot of watch collectors, including myself, will often get something and go, I'll never sell that. And then 3 months later, they've sold it or traded it or whatever.
That's not a dig, is it?
It wasn't meant to be.
Okay. I'll try not to take it. Yep.
This, I will never sell. I will never trade.
No.
And I've had more offers to buy this watch from people than any other watch I've ever owned.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I don't put it up for sale ever because I'd never sell it.
And I think you'd struggle to find another one. They don't come very often to the market.
Yeah.
Nice ones.
And it's the one watch I have, and this will be music to your ears as someone who is a fan of aftermarket straps. And
I am. Tweets.
This is the one watch that I've owned that I absolutely cannot stand on the Omega OEM bracelet. I only wear it on aftermarket straps because they just suit it so much better.
Yeah, I could. I actually got to handle that earlier, and I can rate the strap. Yeah. I do like it. It's got that rubber inside, leather outside. So play on the inside, business on the outside.
Yes, and for anyone that's interested, that's a Barton hybrid strap.
Yep.
Other hybrid straps are available.
Yeah.
But we and I'm not here to endorse a brand.
No.
They are absolutely
but hey, kudos where kudos
sublime
need to be.
for the money.
Yes, they
really cannot recommend them enough.
It's a good piece, the Speedmaster. It's a really good piece. I got one in recently, and it was the new one, and I just loved it. It must have been less than 5 minutes. Steve took it from me, one of my counterparts. Literally just went, I'm having that, and I didn't even get to blink.
Gone into the sunset.
It was one I really wanted as well, but hey.
So, full disclosure, we're going to talk about Swatch. I'm a real Amiga fanboy, so this could get a little bit embarrassing at times, but we're going to talk about the entirety, or try to talk about the entirety of the Swatch group, not just individual parts of it.
Yes, because it's layered.
It's also a humongous enterprise, and that's probably a good place to start, right?
Yes.
They are the one company that you can probably look at out there and see the vertical integration in force, right the way from the lowest end brands right the way up to the highest end, the Breguets, etc., that sit within the Swatch family.
Yes.
That vertical integration, for me, as a collector, is so apparent, and it's so joined up. You see it with the collaborations they're doing at the moment. Yes. You might dislike them, but, you know, the Swatch and Amiga, the Swatch and Blancpain, they're able to do that sort of thing because they are so vertically integrated.
Yeah, agreed. I think, you know, from like a business perspective, I mean, straight away, it's a very hard business not to respect.
Absolutely.
You know, they've gone about it, whereas obviously Rolex perfected what they did. Swatch went, we're going to have our finger in lots of pies and we're going to be damn good at it.
Yeah.
It's basically the gist of it.
Now, the downside of that is clearly, if you think of the ETA movement, which is a Swatch movement,
yes,
they have really made it quite restricted now.
Yes.
To such an extent that I think Solita is probably more present in different brands outside of their family, whereas ETA, everything I hear now is they are becoming more scarce outside of Swatch. Getting hold of parts can be more difficult. Yeah. So there is a bit of genius to that, I guess, because you're keeping people within that monopoly. The Swatch family. Mm-hmm. But if we go back, right, we'll rewind, we'll step into our DeLorean and go back to the 70s and 80s. Now, clearly you and I say clearly, maybe not in my case, too young to remember this, but Swiss watchmaking, put my teeth back in, was on its knees. It was in a really bad place. The Japanese market was taking over, and there were a lot of cheap quartz watches coming over from Asia, and it is broadly recognised that the Swatch Group was one of, if not the companies that revived the Swiss and the automatic watch industry, and they did that through someone called Nicholas Hayek. And Nicholas wasn't a watchmaker, he was a consultant, much like me, even though I probably have about a quarter of as much talent as he probably does. And he was brought in not just to fix Swatch, but ultimately to rebuild the entire Swiss watchmaking industry, which is such a cool thing to be able to say.
It is. Yeah, it is. And especially, you know, the stories you hear about them, love them or hate them, it's a fascinating one.
It is.
You know, and the monopoly, it's, without a doubt.
It is. So thinking about monopoly, I look at Swatch personally, and I think of just the breadth that they cover, and therefore having that monopoly.
Yeah.
So people may not be aware, but you know, Swatch watches range from probably 50 quid up to 50,000 quid. You've got
and then some.
Swatch, Longines, Mido,
yes,
Amiga, Breguet,
Blancpain.
Thank you. Like dozens and dozens of just child brands within the main brand that I think help them to have that monopoly within the market.
Yes.
But also that supply chain as well.
Yes. And each brand, you can tell they've all got their own identity.
Mm.
You can definitely tell they've all got their own identity. And I've recently got in a Breguet Tradition, and
Lovely.
I don't know. I've never, in my time, ever been able to handle a watch and say that is the definition of art.
Mm.
That Breguet Tradition is just the level of depth and intricacy in that is just... Yeah, that's a 7027 reference. That one is just, it's absolutely special. And then you go to the 50 Fathoms, and that is just an absolutely outstanding watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely outstanding watch. Really good value for money as well. You look at the sizing of it, it's big, but also a good lug to lug. It is a, fantastic piece.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, they make some amazing watches across different spans. And, you look at Longines and some of the limited edition they produce is just absolutely outstanding.
Yeah,
Really
and some of the newer releases from Longines, you've had the new Conquest that's come out that has drawn so many plaudits, so many positive looks. And, I admit, I am an Omega fanboy. I do really love Omega. It's probably... That and Tudor are probably the brands that I've owned the most of. It probably is Omega.
Yes.
And I find that, for me... Omega is the brand that I don't think there are many people in the watch collecting space that would turn their noses up at an Omega.
No, you have to appreciate them. I think my issue is just the retail price of them now.
Right.
I really struggle with it. And I think it's tough because you always need customers to go out there and buy them brand new. Of course you do, but... It's just, I struggle with... Don't get me wrong, I think they're absolutely amazing buys in the pre-owned market. But, we can't sit here and say only buy pre-owned, because if only you buy pre-owned, you're never going to... You need both people and both buyers, of course you do. But, it's just got to the point more recently where I've started to look at some of the RRPs and I've just gone, how much? £6,000 for a Seamaster. We got in one recently, absolutely lovely piece. It was a green bezel, green dial with the mixed gold bezel. Lovely piece, titanium, absolutely outstanding. But it was 10,000 new, and you just start to go,
that's a lump of money.
I mean, you've really got to think, I can think of probably 10, 12 years ago when I was maybe on my run of just every piece I was getting was new, and my wife it was getting to the point where I was going, how do I hide this? And I was buying them new all the time. And even then, you would, Planet Oceans from memory were 3,500, 4,000. Good value. The new ones come out, and I've looked at it, at the 42mm one, and gone, how much better that is compared to the previous ones. Absolutely unbelievable. Knocked it out the park. But then they get to those final last words and go, great, that's £8,000. And I go, oh, God almighty. Like, that's the type of money that really makes you go, wow.
Yeah,
and whether or not...
You stop at that kind of
You
money.
do stop at that type of money. And I don't know whether or not it's the industry from the COVID bubble that we've had where people have been willing to pay those prices because the resale market's been so high. Now there's that big disparity. Has also 0% also potentially encouraged buyers that maybe don't have... I've definitely noticed that maybe such an interest... It's not £8,000, it's £60 a month. You don't necessarily see that. But I think from my perspective, where I always kind of look at stuff because of what I do from a market perspective, I've started to really got to think about some of the pieces from that brand, without a doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt. But the used offerings, and you look at 20, 25-year-old piece ones, like the Golden Eyes and the Broad Arrow, stuff like that. You look at those type of values and go, that is so much watch for the money.
Yeah.
And the build quality is so good on those 90s pieces and those noughties pieces that you go, very hard to argue with what you're getting.
And also, I find I'm a big fan of the Omega era, 2002, maybe 2015-ish.
Yes.
I find as long as you buy well, then you're not going to lose on those. They generally hold their money pretty well.
I agree.
And they're well made. And they're nice looking. They don't look dated, whereas some older watches of that era, you can start to go, looks a bit dated, so I'll pass.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell there's been an evolution where, you look at the Planet Ocean, for example, and that early kind of 2005, 2006 shape, and you kind of see where we are today.
Yeah.
You really can see they've gone, we like the Planet Ocean model, and they've adapted it and tweaked it and improved it and made it better. But also they listened to the helium escape valve and little bits like that. They really listened to buyers and, stuff like that. So, yeah, I think you're right. There's an Omega out there for you. It's just at what price point, used, new, and kind of, there's definitely something out there for everybody to find, without a doubt. Definitely.
So on that note, then, there's something for everyone.
Yes.
Within the group of company collaborations that have happened recently, Swatch and Omega and Blancpain.
Yeah.
Interesting and a good move or a gimmick? What's your view?
I think it's a good move. I like it.
Okay.
I think, we reference back to that question from the last episode from a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes a Speedmaster Swatch fun and cool. It's going to introduce people to the hobby that don't necessarily and wouldn't necessarily be into the hobby. And I also think there's people that I like the Swatch, the Moon Swatch range as an example, because I've seen people wear them and I know they've got 50, 60,000 pound Pateks, and they're wearing a £250, and they buy it for what it is. The Blancpain didn't seem to hit as well.
Agreed. Yeah.
At all. They're great watches, but they're very thick. Was my kind of irritation with them. But I think that Moon Swatch, yes, they've produced so many of them, but never before have I seen such a buzz when something was new. Into the point where I sent the wife. I was like, "Would you please go to London?" And she got there like 20 minutes before the store opened. She called me up and was like, "You're dreaming. You are not getting one.
Round the corner.
It's going round the corner." So it's definitely a bone of contention. I personally think it was a good collaboration from what I can see, because it's brought people into the hobby that maybe weren't necessarily in there. And that's the nice thing about this hobby, is everyone's got a different taste.
So it's not often that I like to admit that I'm wrong. But with the Moon Swatch collaboration, I think I was wrong. When it first came out, I almost...
a hater.
I wanted to dislike it, and maybe that's because I've owned Speedmasters, and I wanted to be anti it because it almost diluted the Omega brand. It dragged up the Swatch brand, did negative things to the Omega brand. It's still not my thing, but just because it's not my thing doesn't mean it was the wrong thing.
No.
I see, similar to what you just said, that sometimes there's a hype when a new watch comes out, and then they try and do a Mark II, Mark III, next release, and the hype is just dying, gone. I was on a group the other day, and I saw just people going absolutely potty for a new Moon Swatch release that has just come out.
The all-white one sort of thing. I've lost track, but I'm pretty sure it's the all-white one.
Queuing round the corner of a watch store in, I think it was Westfield in London. And what that says to you is there is still demand for it, and we're now 5 years into the experiment, is it?
It must be a good 4 or 5 years, because I can think, And
it's not dead. I do find interesting, obviously you and I spend a lot of time talking about new watches, pre-owned watches.
Yes.
I find the pre-owned market is pretty tough. Like I see them going for quite cheap, as in really cheap, and people struggling to sell them.
Yeah.
But does it really matter if you're spending, let's say, £250 on something?
Yeah.
You enjoy it. It makes you feel like you're connected to a brand that you otherwise might not be.
Yeah.
You enjoy it for a year.
Yeah.
And you sell it for cheap.
Yeah.
Does it really matter?
No, but I think that's part of the whole point of Swatch, isn't it? It's that, I don't know, I've always come across from a Swatch point of view of being like, it's a fun watch. It's not meant to be serious.
Agreed.
It's meant to be as a, if you're a serious collector, you laugh and go, I bought a Swatch. And it's fun. It's not meant to be something that you go, I intrinsically can sell this on and get something, high for it. Yeah, and obviously in the early days, there was people that sold them kind of really quite quickly. But, I think definitely Swatch to me has always been a brand that it's just a bit of fun. You go on the website, you add one to the basket, you go, I'll add a second, it's only £80. Yep. That's the type of fun brand that it is. And I think it's just a different level of joy to the industry and to kind of our very weird hobby.
And I still remember I went to a watch boutique to buy something for myself. Similar to the story you just told, they had swatches in there.
Right.
And I remember I was buying something for myself, and I've got 2 sons, and they wanted a swatch each, and it was
like a flick-flack. They called it flick-flack? Flick-flack, yeah.
One was in the shape of a basketball, one had fishes on it, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, sure, you can have that. Like, it was a nice...
£33, I think they were?
Yeah, to get them into the hobby, to get them into the enjoyment of something.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the 10-year-old asking the question in the last episode.
Yeah.
That, for me, is... I think about some of the hobbies I have now. They started from a young age.
Yeah.
And the entry-level swatch is a nice way to get people into the hobby.
100%. And, use the flick-flack as an example. I remember I bought my daughter one. They're pretty good in helping kids tell the time. Yep. They actually fall into it, and it's the watch price point that you can kind of go, it makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a brand that can kind of cover so many bases. And tick so many boxes, and it's a brand that has got so much heritage, and it makes a lot of business sense kind of having that kind of monopoly in what they do, without a doubt. And there's some great values at it. Right now you can get 50 fathoms for not far in the pre-owned market, not far off a brand new Seamaster. So there's some amazing options out there that you look into some of these brands, and for what you can get in the market, there's some great propositions, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Should we move on to some questions?
Let's. I will go first.
So, Tristan, our first question is from Jack in Manchester. So thank you, Jack. And the question is, I'm very new to watch collecting. Where do you think I should start? Should I go for vintage or modern pieces? And I guess the second part of the question, new or pre-owned?
Modern. Vintage, I think, should come several watches in. It's a weird world, vintage. It can go wrong really, really quickly from multiple different reasons. Yep. Yeah, it can be very expensive. If you get the wrong one, the wrong patina, the wrong dial, and all bits like that, it can get very expensive very quickly. So modern, definitely. New or pre-owned. I personally would go pre-owned, personally. Not to say that new, again, new there's a good place for new. We need new in the market. But I think if you're getting out, you're trying something... Again, it depends on how you are as a person. I've got quite an addictive personality, so the pre-owned market works better for me because I like to kind of get in and get out sort of thing.
Yep.
But yeah, I think if it was me, I would go pre-owned. I would go modern. If I had, a budget, I would probably push it to around the 1,500, 2,000 mark. I would probably start off with something from the Black Bay range, Tudor.
I was going to say a Tudor, yeah.
You've got 41mm, 39mm.
On a bracelet.
You've got watered down, heritage looking, vintage looking in the Black Bay Heritage. Yep. You've got different ages, different generations. Yep. The build quality's there. They're very easy to move on. For very little damage. 100, 200 pounds sometimes to the purse when you decide to move them on. Yep. So yeah, that would be my pre-owned, modern. If you can stretch that type of budget, Tudor.
Okay.
Yeah. Your question. Alex from Liverpool asks, what is the truth about limited edition watches, and are they really that much more valuable?
It's a great question, Alex. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. So value for me is a tricky one, because for me, and this is not to give a politician's answer, but value can mean something very different to me, to you, to people watching and listening. So value is in the eye of the beholder, is in the eye of the purse of the buyer, whatever you want to say. As a personal reflection, I've realised something about my watch collecting journey actually quite recently, and that is that as my tastes have matured and as I've gone through more pieces than I or my wife would care to admit to, I've realised something, and that is that scarcity is a massive attraction to me, more than probably any other factor. So, and I've realised that through coincidence rather than by actually trying to figure out what I'm into. So I think about some of the watches that I've acquired fairly recently that are limited runs of 10 or 20, and it really makes me more attracted to a watch. It really makes me want to wear it and keep it more.
Yes.
And that is for no other reason than for myself.
Yep.
Some people would say, I want to own a one of one so I can show it off and put it on Facebook and, Instagram and whatever. I actually want to just enjoy it for myself,
for that
and
story.
know that it's a special watch
that
I might have had to work quite hard to obtain.
Yeah.
So the truth about limited edition watches, I think, depends. They're more scarce. They can hold their value more. Not in all cases. Sometimes you might get limited edition watches that tank because no one wants any of them.
Yeah.
But for me, as a bit of a reflection on my journey, I've realised that scarcity and having something that is quite rare and limited actually means an awful lot to me.
Yeah, and I can echo a lot of that. I think there's there's more to an answer. It's a very layered answer. I think the limited edition world. Sometimes, especially when you're buying limited edition, you tend to have to buy them new because they are limited. You also tend to have to pay the higher price on some. You have to pay the full retail price. You're not necessarily going to get a deal. Yeah. They may not be in the sale. Yeah. So, you've always got to kind of factor that in. But I could definitely think of pieces that I've handled. I could definitely think of limited edition watches. And I got one. We got one over here, which is one of the first nice watches I bought. That's not it. It's the fourth time I've owned, and there's only 1,000 of those. But I could think of a normal Navitomer from that type of period, the early BO1s, middle of the BO1s when they all kind of came out. Yeah, they'd probably go for 3.5, but that particular one's probably worth 5.5, 6,000.
Right.
Just because of the fact of it's got the black sunburst dial. It's limited to 1,000 pieces. They did actually make a Japan edition that looked pretty much identical. That one's known as the Stratos Grey version. But I definitely think there is limited edition does have a lot of benefits. I would probably sway more to, if it was maybe a 5-10% premium, I would choose the limited edition if I liked the limited edition. If it was, I'm buying it solely the fact it's limited edition, but it's not my favourite one, I wouldn't buy it. Yeah. But if it was, I would pay a slight premium to get a limited edition piece without a doubt. Yeah, 100%.
I agree.
Good. There we go.
That's it then.
Yeah? All good?
We'll leave it there, will we?
We'll. Yeah, we'll go and have a little break and
freshen up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we managed to keep it within time when we finished our last one and realised we did 43 minutes of rambling on and we saw Jordan's. That was one thing that has shocked me with this, I would say, is the level of work that goes on behind the scenes from an editing point of view. I ignorantly thought this is going to take 20 minutes for Jordan to hash these videos together and produce them, but no, the aging in his forehead is prominent. We can see it after 7 hours of editing. So
big up Jordan.
Big up Jordan, and apologies for the last 42-minute one that we rambled on for.
So we'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.